Yes, it's the experience when you wake up in the morning. I feel usually in a low, in a low mood.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and then I pick up during the day.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Well, what do you think this happens as you wake up in the morning?
Yeah, I think that's a universal phenomena, especially in early spiritual work, or if you're heavy with thoughts, that the mornings you tend to wake up with a lot of thinking on you, or a lot of feelings on you.
Yeah, it's more on the feeling side.
More on the feelings, yeah.
More on the feeling side. Yeah, I would describe it as a low mood and a heaviness.
Usually the heaviness comes because there is huge identification with thoughts or body and feelings. So it would mean that see, what I say is at different stages, but also there can be fluctuations even for advanced spiritual seekers. But generally, as you do your spiritual work, these feelings tend to become less intense and oscillate around a lower marker. But the low, you see, often the feelings are due to high identification with either thoughts, feelings, the body, and also due to a backlog of unprocessed thoughts or feelings, what I often call the suppressed emotions. So they tend to do it often during the day for various reasons. It will become lighter for various reasons. When you don't pay attention to something, then it tends not to be noticed. And also, so it can be there, but when you fixate on something, it tends to be noticed more. So, in that way, so the low mood, the way to get out of the low mood is to process it in the morning if you have time, either through sitting with the feelings and just experiencing it without labeling, or also getting any other spiritual practice in the morning. I like to sort of sit, I sort of see, like if I have a low mood, I sort of see I have a reservoir of suppressed feelings. So it's like, it means, I've accumulated a lot of suppressed feelings. So it's almost like I'm waking up with this very, very low mood and I'm engulfed in it. So I sort of see it like, I've accumulated too much. I'm waking up with this low mood. So I'll often spend time just sitting with it. Yeah, sometimes it's not practical to sit with it a long time. I have to go to work or something. But if I can do 10 minutes or 15 minutes of just sitting with the feeling and try not to label or make a story about what the feeling represents, it's almost like having an attitude of non-resistance and not picking up on labeling or engaging into a story around, describing what type of feeling, what it's about. So that for me would be one of the methods I'd use, which would be a type of really acceptance or allowing or being with whatever is being experienced, so that the feeling can then evaporate out, or you take it out in chunks. Also, any other spiritual practice, well, that's one of my favorite ones. All other spiritual practices.
When you sit with a feeling,
yes.
What are your thought processes? Do you do a lot of thinking?
No, when I sit with the feeling, this is because I was taught this by a teacher, Dr David R Hawkins, about 10, 12, 15 years ago, quite over a decade ago, that the importance of being with feelings but not going into a story or labeling what the feeling is. So I've developed this practice over many, many years. And if there's a very strong feeling, sometimes if there's minor feelings, I'll get on with my day. But if it's like a really big feeling, and when I say feelings, for me everything that arises, we're using words now, but even pain is a feeling for me. Even, shame, anger, guilt, fear, breathlessness, symptoms in the body. For me, they're all types of feelings. But actually, whatever it is, it doesn't really matter. It's just, the experience is just to be 100%. You see, one is dissolving the I. So there's no me. The thing is, like, if you go from a more non-dualistic or enlightenment perspective, when you engage in thoughts, you create an I that then makes a story. Like, I am at the effect of this horrible low mood. You see, so it's making a story, or I'm a victim because I wish this feeling wasn't here. So it was like the practices that was described to me is like actually is it's like not even you, but just presence with the feeling. Not even that, just allowing the feeling to be experienced. And when you don't engage in any type of thought, then you're just experiencing it. Now, in the beginning, how the thought process operates is that this is like through many years of practice, is that because you're always like, the attitude is to experience the feeling and not engage in thought. The more you do that, the better you become over the years. So it's like what actually happens if we slow it down is that there's a feeling and then a thought tries to emerge either about the feeling or about anything else, and then it's identified with, and as soon as energy is given to that the beginning, the first split second of that thought, then it develops into a sentence, you see, and that identification then sends you off into quite a lot of thinking. So that process is what we'd call resistance. You're not actually experiencing the feeling, you're actually the more you engage in thought while that feeling is there, that's really the greater the engagement in resistance to experiencing the feeling out. So for me, one of the things with myself was that Hawkins had recovered from many illnesses using this being one of the principal things. He did other things of just feeling the feelings without engaging in thoughts. So I like to call it feeling out the feelings, and and there's another thing like with the Course in Miracles, you can, if there's something you believe, like I've got kidney failure or I've got gout, you can cancel those at another point. But it's almost like you, instead of calling it gout or calling it low mood, you just stop trying to put a label on it and just experience it and just be with it. And it's like what was described to me is that eventually you empty out the feeling and you'll come to peace. It may, for some feelings, take a long time, and for some it can be done more quicker. So this was a thing. So that's what so to give you an example, like I used to get, this can be done with anger, low mood, fear, it doesn't really matter. They're all what I call experiencings that are coming up, feelings that are coming up. So when I used to get pain, I used to get gout attacks. My feet became swollen, it was very painful. But actually that's just a thought. It's just a sensation. So you just empty, you just let go of the trying to engage in any thinking around what's the feeling that's there. And then it's almost like, it's not a verbal thing, it's like being one with that feeling. Yeah, so that is like, and if you can get it just right, with no resistance, it actually starts to become pleasurable, because you're not labeling, you're just being with whatever is in the now. So often I had that experience. I think if you can do zero resistance, like Hawkins could do zero resistance, then you can be catapulted off into these very high spiritual states. So like with Dr. Hawkins, I was so inspired because he wasn't able to take anesthetic. And there was this time when he was in the woods using I think it was a chainsaw or something like that, and he cut his thumb off. Maybe you remember this. Cut his thumb off. There was a little bit of blood, but he went into non-resistance to experience it fully without labeling, more or less. And there was only 8 drops of blood, but he had to go to have an operation done, but he wasn't allowed to use anaesthetic. So it just meant, now he's I would call him an enlightened teacher. So here's the thing, you see, it's like if you practice this method of just whatever comes, don't label, but just experience it 100% fully, without distracting, just being present. Then he went off into bliss as they were chopping through him without anesthetic. So that's like what an advanced enlightened teacher would do. I had experiences like with the gout where it become pleasurable. It's like when I stop, it's almost like there's a inbuilt ego mechanism to resist anything it doesn't like. It's like it's this kind of inner resistance, and that inner resistance, like thoughts like I don't want this feeling to be here, or almost like a non-verbal resisting experiencing what is coming up, creates the experience. So if you could not resist it, you'd probably go off into a very high spiritual state. But often I would feel, in the beginning, when I was feeling out the pain in the foot, it would be, I would be letting go of my thoughts, trying to let go of the word gout, letting go of location that is supposed to be in a location in my foot, and just being one with that and disappearing the sense of an I being with that. So it's just the isness of the experience. And it would be very, very pleasurable. And then after a while, it would be like it was there was no pain and you could walk around for a little bit. So also with another thing, I remembered Hawkins' thing, very inspiring story with going through an operation without anesthetic, and how he used this method of just experiencing. Immediately as something arises, you experience it immediately without thinking or resisting. He described it in quite a few different scenarios, how to do it precisely, and I was very, very enthusiastic, have been for many years. Not to label, not to go into a story, just to experience 100%. So I remember once I had to have the doctors, it was a long time ago when I was very ill, the doctors said that you're about to have a heart attack, so they had to give me an emergency injection. And when I saw the injection, it was one of those big needles, to bring down my potassium levels. And I looked at it and I go, well, I have to do what Hawkins has done. So as they plunge in the needle, I have to not resist and just experience it 100%. I did that, and I was almost going off into bliss, into heaven, as they were just plunging in the big needle. And then, they didn't want me to go off into bliss, so they're trying to wake me up and give me sugary drinks because they thought I was diabetic. So they kept me awake, but it worked. I also had this with, I'm just showing the advanced aspect to it, which is I used to have cramps in the morning. And I found that if I caught it with no resistance, immediately the split second it started, the cramp in my leg, I would get no cramp at all. But if I resisted for a very short period of time, like I thought I didn't want it, I was having like a non-verbal, no, I don't want this to come, then I'd have like this, it would take a day or so for this sensation to go. So I know that when you experience something, you let it go. Now with acute things, you can often do this and have miraculous things like a needle is an acute thing, or a cramp is an acute thing. Sometimes there's a build-up of feelings, so you may have to go through it in waves.
Yeah, but you're referring more to physical pain.
Well, the emotions, like low mood, is also just a sensation. You see, so okay, like low mood. Well, you'd stop labeling low mood. And normally I would sit down in my chair Stop labeling low mood and just be with it. And then if a story or a thought tries to come about it, then quickly disengage and just be with the feeling, you see. And then you'll find that it'll be there's like full awareness of this thing.
How do you personally quickly disengage?
Sorry?
How do you quickly disengage?
From the thoughts?
Yes.
I mean, this is like a practice that happens over a long period of time. In the early days, there's like an almost a rabid, like I used to be in addiction, so there's like a rabid thing of being hyper engaged in all thoughts all the time, and just being in almost, they'd call it being in the head all the time, being in your thoughts non-stop. So this thing of like, but then Hawkins described the procedure I said. You've got to be aware that, you know, when you get a bit of, you're doing meditation or a bit of stillness or a bit of spiritual work, you'll notice that there are moments of silence or stillness. And then you can start to catch how a thought emerges in consciousness. It's like a thought starts to emerge, and then it's like there's identification or interest that immediately goes to that. You start to catch it the more you do the thing, and in that it's usually unconscious that you've engaged in the starting of a thought, and then you know, it's unconscious. You're already in sentences and in thoughts and in stories.
Engage mean identify.
Identify, yes. You see, and that's usually for most people who haven't done spiritual work, that's a habitual thing which they're unconscious of. So they believe they are their thoughts, and they are. One of the things I recognize with thoughts, you see, is like, you know, I'm using it describing words, but I think it's helpful, even though it may not be 100% accurate. It's like, if there's like low mood, if you can let go of like hooking in or identifying with thoughts, you can almost be like one with the feeling, almost like there's just the feeling and nothing else, you see. Now, what will happen then is that, for me, that's the optimal mode. Just experiencing the feeling and not engaging in thought. And then it'll quickly as possible, that's what I call zero resistance, just being with whatever is. That's the optimal mode. Now, as I started to do this work, it was like you start to be able to know, as you start to get experience of just being with pure feeling, and then get the experience of being in thinking, you'll start to see it's a very different experience. So what I recognized was, over the years of doing this, was that, you know, it's like if there's a strong feeling, it's almost like, because I've practiced for so long, I'm trying to be helpful, but it's like I know now, because I've been doing it for so much, that I need to like 100% disengage. I don't know 100%, but it's like one knows how to be with a feeling, and it's a different experience than being in the thinking. You see, so so it's almost like when I'm in the thinking, it's almost like it's a different energy. It's just being in thought energy. It has a kind of a different energy. So, and almost like there's something that's very addicted to just being in the thoughts all the time and in stories. And then as you disengage from that, there's more like just being with feeling, which is it's almost, you know, because everything is non-dual at the end of the day, but it's almost like they're in different places. You know, this is not accurate, but it's like when you're just feeling the feeling, it's like, it becomes, as you practice, it's like disengaging from just giving the energy to the thoughts and just allowing the experiencing of feeling. Now, in the beginning, of course, it's not that easy, because usually one is, maybe for you, it might be because you don't engage in the thoughts. But if you are engaging in the thoughts, then this is over time, it's like you're trying to get the experience of what it would be like just to be not in thought and just experiencing the feeling. Even if you can do it for a second or two, that will give you an experience of the difference between being in mental energy and experiencing just being with pure feeling without attaching or identifying with thoughts. And then you'll be able to almost like, you'll be able to gain, as you keep practicing this, it'll become easier and easier to just quickly unhook from thoughts and just experience these longer intervals of just being with the pure experiencing or the pure feeling. Or low mood is just an energy, just the experiencing of energy without diverting or even you can divert for a few seconds or a split second, but then you know that the sensation is, and it feels good when you're out of thoughts, and if there's a lot of feelings coming up, if you can be with it without distracting, and at a certain point it actually feels very, very cathartic, or like you're spiritually releasing something. Whereas the hooking into the thoughts, the identification with thoughts, you disconnect from this, it's a different experience of just experiencing the feeling. So, but in the beginning, if there's too many thoughts non-stop, it's like starting to practice. Can you disengage from a thought and can you just go back to just experiencing the energy? And if you can get some experience of just experiencing the feeling, just knowing what it's like to just experience the experience, the energy without going off into thought, then you start to it starts to get easier because now you can reference that. And also as you start to have that attitude, you'll have longer periods where you can just be with the feeling without going into thoughts. And you'll also develop this kind of inner capacity to be able to switch off engaging from thoughts. Because
there is an observer of the thoughts.
That's a different mechanism. So that's another mechanism you could do.
Because to disengage from the thoughts, you have to be able to observe the thoughts.
Well, if you go to the observer of the thoughts, yes, you disengage. But also if you have like an attitude of not identifying with thoughts and being with the now, the experiencing of now, over time that also has a similar effect over a period of time.
They are different.
They're different mechanisms. So it's like if a spiritual seeker had the intention just to be in the now, to experience anything in the now, and keep disidentifying from thoughts non-stop, over a period of time that would start to have an effect. But the other way, some methods are quicker and some methods are slower. And some methods don't work too well. The observer is, of course, my preferred method, but it's an optional. I was just sharing one of the things I do with. I can flip between the two, but often if I have a lot of energy suppressed, I can mix the two of them. Because that one. You can do both together, there's no wrong thing. The observer is like, you go to the observer of the thoughts and the feeling. What's observing thoughts and feelings? What's disidentified and observing the thoughts and feelings? And then as soon as you don't identify, actually there will be no experience of the thoughts or the feeling because it'll be totally released. So that can be, I've had also experience of that, where one of the ones that was a bit funny was after I had my transplant operation. That was under general anesthetic, but afterwards I was like 100% determined that while the healing was going on, I would take no painkillers. So I refused the morphine pump after the operation. It was quite, to have a transplant is a very sizable cut. I was determined because I was just to experience the feeling with no resistance, because I thought if Hawkins can have his fingers chopped off with doing no resistance and no anesthetic, then surely I can go through that. So I was really determined, and I didn't use the morphine pump. But it was actually more intense than I had expected. But that was fine, I was just like, I thought, well, okay, it's extremely intense, but I'm saying I'm not going to ask for any painkillers, so whatever it is. But then it was like, so I was using the feelings and being with it, which was, and also saying the Lord's Prayer. But at a certain point I realized because of such intense pain that I would not get to sleep. There'd be no sleep that night because it would go through the whole night. It was that intense. Yeah.
You said you were reciting the Lord's Prayer.
Yes, also. I was trying to be 100% with it, but I was also reciting the Lord's Prayer.
Why did you do that? What did it help you to do that?
It's also another tool I use in extreme circumstances. It just happened to be, I was trying to feel the feelings, but it's just another one of my favourite tools, which I tend to use in emergencies. The way I use the Lord's Prayer, if I'm under extreme circumstances, it's never failed me. I've had the most miraculous stuff happen.
You mean the Christian Lord's Prayer?
Yes, the Our Father who art in heaven. So what I do, it's quite easy to do if you're in having extreme circumstances, is that I also repeat it very fast, you see, and I was with the feeling anyway.
Why do you do that? Why do you repeat it very fast? To stop the thinking.
No, me to stop the thinking, and also I know that it's kind of obvious for me that when I do it slowly, Our Father, I know that won't work very well.
Actually, it works with me when I do it slowly.
Okay, with me, we can be different.
Do you think there is a value in, for instance, the Catholic practice of praying the Rosary?
You see, for me, devotion is a way to God. Any intention done with surrender, love of God, love of life, an attitude of service, or if you have a spiritual teacher or a spiritual tradition where you're doing any act of devotion, will connect you to that will help connect you to the non-dual space, because your intention is that of a devotional act. So doing the Rosary, if you're very, very devotional in doing it, you'll have quite a large connection, a large spiritual experience in doing that. But any act of, when done with the act of devotion, has a very, very positive thing on letting the ego go and connecting to grace. So yes, doing the Rosary, and the Christians who devotionally do that, or in any tradition, when it's done with true devotion, the act of intention, doing it for devotion, to be in service to God, to Jesus, to a master, that they do connect you, whether it be the Rosary, whether it be tidying up the room, because they're done with the intention and the act of devotion. So absolutely. And I sometimes, my feeling is as well, is things that, like I was saying, the Lord's Prayer, I think within the collective, if a thing has been done a lot by a lot of people, that it also adds to a kind of a gravitas.
Yeah.
So I think, intuitively I like the Lord's Prayer. I think there's also probably it's been done by a lot of people, so there's a collective weight to it as well. And I think the Rosary, of course, is another one. So I think there's great power and grace and devotion, and Christianity, how many, so yes, absolutely, doing the Rosary, I think, will be very, very good. And
I find it interesting because I don't think I would find many people interested in, more on the Eastern side of spirituality. Yes?
Sorry, say that again?
People who are more into the Eastern side of spirituality, that goes and I pray the Lord's Prayer. So it's interesting that you do it. I wouldn't have thought that it's a very common thing to do for anyone who is into more Eastern spirituality.
Oh, well, I have two teachers. I just basically have two teachers. One is Muji, and the other one is Dr. Hawkins. And Dr. Hawkins has calibrated, everything. And I think, Yeah, Hawkins said that there's three teachers that reached the highest level of enlightenment: Jesus, Buddha, and Krishna. But I think Hawkins had a Christian background, and is very much, and he's done a lot of research on Christianity and the calibrations of the various things in Christianity, and he also endorses. So I've had a lot of influence from Hawkins on Christianity and various things. He also calibrated certain prayers. I think the Lord's Prayer, I think, is at 650, and Om is at 700. But
Yeah, just repeating Om.
just repeating Om, and but for me personally, I don't. I have a gravity towards the Lord's Prayer. Maybe it's a past life karmic thing, but my thing is, I have a resonance or pre-existing resonance with the Lord's Prayer. Probably not from this lifetime, but from somewhere. So I can easily. So I rather than do the Om thing when I'm in trouble, I don't do the Om. I do the Lord's Prayer.
He breaks it if he's in trouble.
It's more abstract, the Om thing, which is more abstract.
For me, it's more like a thing I do when I'm already in a high state. I'll like Om. Whereas when I don't normally do that. I mean, I do I do say the Lord's Prayer every day, but
at a particular time.
yes, I just do it
when you wake up
in the morning. I have in the morning. This is what I do in the morning. So in the morning, I wake up, and then I try as quickly as possible to get on my knees, and then
Do you?
Yeah, I get on my knees. So I think getting on my knees is an act of devotion to God. You see, I see that's adding. I actually find I connect more if I'm on my knees than if I just say the prayer as I'm running around. For myself, I can feel the energy is different in myself. As I get on my knees, I can say it on here because this is my group. But I do the Lord's Prayer. I do the St. Francis. Well, the St. Francis prayer I do at the end. I start with the Lord's Prayer, but the St. Francis comes at the end. St. Francis is 5. A little bit lower than the Lord's Prayer, just tiny bit. But Hawkins was I think Hawkins really liked the Lord's Prayer and the St. Francis. Those were two of his favourite prayers. Okay. And he also liked the 91st Psalm, which I haven't gone into that much.
Which one?
91st Psalm. 91st Psalm. He said that he liked the Lord's Prayer. He also liked a lot. He connected a lot with the St. Francis prayer. And then the 91st Psalm. Those are his three things which he particularly liked, and I was very influenced by him. So I didn't pick up the 91st Psalm because I have read it a few times, but I was attracted to the Lord's Prayer and St. Francis prayer. St. Francis is very much, you can feel it's like a mystic. It's in dying that one is born to eternal life. For me, that's the limitless, eternal, non-dual state. So I can see it's already, because I had these profound spiritual experiences. When I say it's in dying that one is born to eternal life, it's like, it's the death of the ego, that one is born to enlightenment, the eternal, the undying. So I think he had that attraction to that mystical type prayer. I mean, the Lord's Prayer is also very powerful, but I could feel the mysticism in the St. Francis one as well. So I really like that in dying one is born to eternal, and I get a sense of, what that dying is. I've had experiences and just being in that eternal state of the undying. So I like the St. Francis, but I also like there's a power I find. I tend to use the Lord's Prayer, so I might do it once or twice a day as a general routine. But I don't tend to use the Lord's Prayer apart from that. But if I go, sometimes on very rare occasions, I haven't used it in a long time. But as I was saying, with that operation many years ago, I used it because every time I've used it, like very, very fast, some miracle has happened, and so it's part of my repertoire. For me, it's fast. It's like it works well for me. Intuitively, I know that if I was in extreme agony or pain, like saying it very slowly wouldn't work for me. It might be different for other people. For me, it's like fast.
There is something else, but when I pray,
Yes.
the Lord's Prayer, that helps me as well, which is to place my hand either on my chest or at the base of the, what do you call it?
The sacral chakra.
Well, maybe.
Solar plexus.
Or solar plexus.
No, a bit below, there.
Yeah, that's more near the sacral, yeah.
The sacral.
Yeah.
You're right. Does that mean anything?
Well, sorry, here?
Either here or there.
Well, that's like the heart almost. That's very devotional.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of cultures will do that. They'll put their hand on their kind of heart and bow. So that's a very devotional act. For me, that's, I think there's often one intuitively, energetically knows when something feels energetically right for the individual. So, we have even though this is not non-duality, they say from Indian culture we have chakras going around. And then energy comes through your palms as well. If a chakra is out of balance, intuitively, if you put your hand on it, it will give relief, or you may be intuitively guided to put your hand somewhere. Whether it be on the heart or on the head or something like that, on the throat.
What is the sacral chakra?
The sacral is usually, for me, it can be with sexual energy. It can be due to often with that chakra there'll be if it's out of balance, there'll be certain dualistic things that you work through, or belief systems that you can work through. You can do that through whatever is coming up for you at the time. It can represent abstract things, the sacral chakra as well. So I'm not really an absolute expert in going through. I used to read charts on exactly what each chakra and the various things that it represented. They have different colors and there are spins, and there's certain things associated. If they're blocked, there's certain common things that are associated with that blockage. Like I think the chakra for power. Often it'll be like if you're disempowered or you're not in your authentic power, that things will come up. With the throat, it will be like, with being able to speak. With the third eye, I think it's like discernment. With the sacral chakra, it may be around sexual stuff. So there's various things, but that they go. So if you just put your hands on this, I trained in Reiki and spiritual healing, so we put our hands on the major chakras so as to balance them out. If this was out, if you felt this was out, this was out. So yeah.
How do you call it?
Reiki?
Reiki
or spiritual healing. I trained in both before I came into the non-dual. Yeah. I'm not recommending them, but I learnt about the...
do you find them useful?
I wouldn't use them now.
You wouldn't?
No, I wouldn't use them now.
Why not?
Well, I do see one guy sometimes. I think he has a better method of balancing out the body physically, which is similar, but he just happens to be a more powerful guy. I do sometimes. I have recently actually tried doing a little bit of that. So if I feel, I just sense you start to gain a sensitivity. If you can feel that it's almost like the body knows when it needs something somewhere. So if you put the hand and you feel a warmth or it feels good, then I'll keep it there, you see. Or if not, then it feels like it doesn't need it, you see. So energy comes out. So it's almost like if there's energy flowing around the body, you can start to rebalance things which are not in balance out of the thing. So I do a little bit of that, but it's not really what I focus on in my as my main thing. But sometimes these things happen in that way. Does that answer that question?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So, but whatever feels right, kinesiology is basically your body goes strong. Muscle testing is basically your body goes strong whenever you do anything which is good for the body or good for you, spiritually even. So generally, if you do something or you intuitively feel like you want to do something and it feels better, usually that's a good sign. Sometimes you can be directed, you can be directed by spirit to put your hand in a certain place, or to say a certain prayer, or to go to the observer, or even to do any type of activity. Different things can come, and if you do those things, sometimes.
What do you mean, directed by a spirit?
Intuition.
Intuition.
Yeah. It's like from somewhere, really intuition, as I call it, not coming from the head or the ego. Coming from somewhere else. For me, it's like coming from. There's different levels of tapping into higher intuition, but the highest would be tapping into the omniscience of God. You see.
How do you know it comes from there instead of from the head or from the ego?
Oh, that's a brilliant question. We could talk about that one for a long time. How do you know it comes from the head or from? Well, you see, for me. Yes, it's a great question, and there's many layers to talking about how do you know if it's coming from God or coming from somewhere else. For me, as you do spiritual work, any type of spiritual work, whether you're praying or doing the rosary or whether you're doing the Course in Miracles, the ego is being dissolved. If you just carry a life of just trying to forgive everyone, those thoughts will start to dissolve. And there will be more a sense of peace and presence wherever you go. So that already is giving an indicator that one is a lot more in alignment with Source, with the non-dual, with Spirit, with God, because one is not heavily identified with either thoughts or feelings of the body or the future or the past or anything. So then one starts to get, not from the head, but like a kind of and for each individual it might be slightly different, more like an intuition. Sometimes it might be a sense in some manner comes to you that, oh yes, I should I should put my hand here more often, or I should try and do that, or I should do the Course in Miracles, or maybe it's good to watch some Muji, or I'll buy a Dr Hawkins book. It can come from a different place.
See that it comes very naturally.
It comes naturally, yeah, not from the head. The more one is in the non-dual place, the more one is in the present moment, serene, peaceful, or in limitless states. In the limitless state, of course, it'll be that 100% of the time because you're in limitless. But the more contraction, i.e., the more identification with ego, the more the experiencing of limit in the present moment. So the greater the identification with limits, i.e. thoughts, body, feelings, then there's this huge contraction. So the connection to the limitless is much more reduced. So often in those states, when one is very contracted or limited, or very much in the extreme thinking or extreme body identification or feeling identification, then one tends to be cut off from that higher guidance. So it tends to be, more often than not, it tends to be the ego, it tends to be the thinking that's directing one's life. But what I say to people on a practical level, no matter where you are in your spiritual development, is if you want guidance, is to, like I share with people I help, that if there's an important decision you have to make, then do whatever you can. Like if there's an important decision I have to make tomorrow on something like should I move country or should I stay in England or something like that, would be like to do as much spiritual work as you're able to do today. Prayer, self-inquiry, meditation, trying to be still, praying for knowledge of God's will, praying for the right intuitive thought to come in from God, praying, praying what is God's will in this situation, and then trying to be silent or be as peaceful and still, and doing all of these practices. And then if you feel you've got access to something which is coming not from your head, well, go with that, you see.
When you say praying, you mean no formal prayers, but different kind of prayer, which is more like a conversation? Or
Well, the ones I usually recommend, whatever works for you, is prayers for guidance or knowledge of God's will. Or I do prayer like, God, I pray for your right inspiration, right intuition, and right decision on whether I should.
So it's a spontaneous asking.
Spontaneous asking, yes. And then it's like that's the asking, and then the silence, you see. So it's like if I'm going to do self-inquiry, or if I'm going to meditate, I do self-inquiry, or if I'm going to sit with the feelings, or if I'm going to say do the Course in Miracles, I'll start the prayer or the Course in Miracles at the beginning. Like, I'd like, if possible, I'd like an answer from Limitless on this, and then I'll try and go into those places of stillness or peace, and then see what intuitively comes up. So there'll be a segment almost like you're talking to God or asking God, and then there's a segment of trying to be in the limitless or the silence or the peace, and then.
Do you do this every day?
No, that's what I say to people who need an important answer. No, I don't. I do that because I have my routine that I do regularly of spiritual practice. I usually I have this watch, and I'll often put it to every 5 minutes, where I'll do my Course in Miracles lesson during the day. And usually I do a Course in Miracles lesson, and then I'll try and go for a split second into silence or to the observer. But if I had something that was really important, I might add an additional prayer. Like suddenly if there's a grievance one day, I might do the lesson. I might do the. I also usually do the Hawkins. Hawkins gave me a prayer when I met him. I pray to God for God's. I've forgotten it now. It's I pray to God for divine timing, divine healing, and divine health. Yeah, that's the one he gave me. See, we go every 5 minutes. That's 1 minute, but I can set it to 5. We'll go every 5 minutes, and then I'll just quickly remember the lesson, do the thing, and then if I was needed an important thing, I have a prayer from a different source. It's actually from a 12-step group, which I like, which is, God, I pray for knowledge of God's will around whatever it is, moving country, and the power to carry it out. Or the 12-step prayer is, God, I pray for your right inspiration, right intuition, and right decision around, should I move to another country, for example. So I'll do those prayers. So it's and then I let go. It's like you forget it, and then you're just trying to go into silence or stillness, you see. It doesn't matter.
Sorry, what is David Hawkins' prayer again?
David Hawkins...
Sorry, you've just... I'm sorry.
No. It's
You've
funny.
Just said it and you've forgotten now.
No, that's a 12-step prayer. That wasn't Hawkins.
No, you've said it before there. You did say it. I pray for divine inspiration, divine healing.
No, divine order, divine health, and divine healing. Because when I went to him, I pray for divine health. It was a personal prayer he gave to me when I told him about my kidney failure.
Oh, okay.
And he said, pray for divine health, divine healing, and divine order.
Okay.
So I took that as a prayer from an enlightened teacher specifically for me. So I've said that, probably, I don't know, thousands of times. But I did, all the illnesses I had at the time did leave doing that prayer. And so I do that. Do the Course in Miracles. I do divine healing, divine health, divine order. I'll try and go, just go to silence or the observer. But if there's an additional problem, I might add that on. Like, I pray for guidance around whether I should change country or not, you see. Sometimes I add on. So, but if it's important and I feel the intuition and guidance that I need to be doing that, then I'll do it. That's what I do. So it's almost like...
I think that prayer is very important. It's one of the reasons why I've been reading about all these mystics.
Yes.
Particularly from the Catholic tradition. I think prayer is very important. It also there is a sense of trust when you pray.
Oh yes.
Yeah?
Surrender as well.
Yeah, surrender and trust. Yes.
Absolutely. You know, when I go on my knees and I start doing all the prayers, I can feel the connection. I can feel the presence. You know, because you're waking up in the morning, and then you get on your knees, start saying the Lord's Prayer or the Saint. And I do lots of other stuff as well, other prayers and Course in Miracles prayers. So you feel it. And I think doing it in the morning is very good for setting up your intention.
Yeah.
Before going to bed, do you have any routine?
No, my end routine with prayers is usually in the afternoon.
In the afternoon?
Yeah, it's a bit funny, isn't it? Usually you should do it in the morning and the night. But I just don't want to do it at the night, so I do.
You know the Catholics, they have the liturgy of hours.
Yes.
Yeah, they pray at set times during the day.
Oh, that did not. Yeah.
Yeah. It's actually 6 times in the day.
Really?
Yeah, 6 times in the day. And one of them, for those who live a religious life, I mean monks and nuns, you know, the really committed ones. One of them is about 2 a.m. So they wake up in the middle of the night to pray.
Yes.
And then they go back.
They do that, do they?
Yes, they
They
do.
go back to sleep.
Yes. It's called the liturgy of the hours. And
I think at that times for the, you know, in the East as well, it's almost like it's very important.
2 a.m.
It's actually very interesting because, you know, all this time that I haven't been coming, I have watched a lot of YouTube videos to do with monks and nuns, you know. And, you know, I was fascinated, particularly from the Catholic tradition, from other traditions, but particularly from the Catholic tradition, you know. Because the life is a dedicated life of prayer, you know, and I found that totally fascinating.
So one of them is at 2 o'clock in the morning, so and they go back to sleep, they pray and they go back to sleep.
Yes, yeah.
And then,
and then they wake up probably, I don't know, like 7 a.m., you know, and there are 6 of them distributed, you know, and I think it follows the rule of Saint Benedict or something.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it comes from very far.
Well, Saint Benedict,
very far back, Middle Ages. And some lay people also do some of them, you know, they might do the morning one and the afternoon one, you know.
Yes.
And there is the latest one in the day is called Comply.
Comply.
Yeah, Comply. That's the latest one, the one you do before you go to bed.
Yeah.
So how long are their prayers? Or is just a short prayer?
Well, they follow the Psalms.
I see.
They pray on the Psalms, you know. They recite the Psalms and there is chanting to do with the Psalms.
Right.
Typically chanting in this Gregorian kind of style.
Yeah, Gregorian is high, yeah.
Yes.
Which, so it becomes very holistic because you are singing, you know, you're using your throat to worship, so it's got a formal structure.
Okay. So where do the Gregorian chants come from? I know they're quite high in terms of, I don't know whether, you know, David Hawkins
then the 500s,
calibrated them or not, but I know they're pretty high because I've listened to some of them and you can just feel almost the energy.
Oh yeah, I love them, yeah.
But where do they come from?
Well, it's the, I'm not an expert, but it comes from the Middle Ages.
Okay.
From the Middle Ages. They use musically what is known as the modes. So actually there are only 7 notes, you know, in different combinations. It's not like in the Western that they were later with half tones, you know, and accidentals, flats, sharps. No, it's just It's simpler. It's simpler, you know.
Yes.
And it's within the range of the human voice, because it's 7 notes, you know, within the range of human voice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very. It's very soothing, you know, to me, just listening to them.
Oh yeah.
There was this the monastery de Estilos in Spain, yeah? And the monks there, they publish, you know, I don't know, they released a CD.
Yes.
That was about years ago, you know, a decade ago or something, and it became a bestseller.
Oh.
In places like New York, you know, number
Wow.
one.
What became as a bestseller?
A bestseller.
The Gregorian chant.
Oh, the Gregorian chants, yeah, that's quite
in New
popular.
York. Everybody went crazy about it. There was a craze about
How lovely.
it. Like there was a hunger for it, you know.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah, Gregorian chant.
Well, you know,
Yeah.
I would recommend, you know, to go to YouTube.
Listen to
Liturgy
them.
of Hours. It's very, very interesting, you know.
That is very
So it's to do with this prayer, you know, prayer in a structured way, of course, because it's the tradition they followed mostly the Psalms, you know.
Well, I think that's lovely and devotional, and often these things are very inspired from high places. Yeah.
There is the book. I mean, you can buy the book. It's like it's 4 volumes because you know it follows the calendar year for the Catholic tradition. You know? But it's very structured, and then you can buy like abbreviated versions and so on and so forth. Yeah.
But the prayer is really, when we're still in duality, isn't it? We are not in duality. We don't require a prayer.
No,
correct?
non-duality.
It's non-duality because we are one.
Yeah, you
we
don't
need.
You're there now. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus doesn't need to pray if he's in trouble. Nor does Buddha.
Yeah.
So, but they have great power to take you higher. And if you're non-duality, you might give people at a lower vibration prayers to do.
Can you repeat?
If you're at the highest levels of enlightenment, like Jesus or Buddha, you may give others prayers, you know, because you can understand the ego.
Yes.
To give them.
Jesus prayed a lot.
Pardon?
Prayed a lot. Jesus prayed a lot, particularly in all Gospels, but particularly in the Gospel of Luke.
Yes. Yeah, I'm sure he did. I mean, in terms of needing.
It was like an intimacy with the Father, you see.
Yes. Could be. Yeah.
Did he pray a lot?
Oh yes, Jesus, yes. He sought solitude to pray. So he went to the certain places to have this intimacy with the Father. That's what I was saying. And then because he was praying so much,
Yeah.
and the disciples they wanted to imitate,
join in.
you know, yeah, but they didn't know how. So they asked him, teach us to pray, and then when he gave them the Lord's Prayer.
Is that when he gave them the Lord's Prayer?
Yes, because
Oh, that's how the Lord's Prayer originates?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I
counted.
didn't know that.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert.
Really? I don't know either because I've only learned it recently. Sabbir told me the calibrate's really high. I learned it quite some time ago. I thought I'm going to learn it. Right, okay.
At the request
Oh,
of
is that
the
really?
disciples, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. No, that's lovely. I didn't
So
know
is
that.
it exactly the same as the Lord's Prayer as it is today? Is it exactly as it
Yes,
was
yes.
given then
Yes,
to the disciples?
yes, the same one, yes.
Okay.
It's in the Gospels, you know, it's there.
It's in the Gospel.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's lovely.
Okay.
Also, different. You know, that could be. Yeah.
Okay.
It's also different enlightened teachers tend to have their own thing as well. Their own. They're slightly different, and they do things and explain things and communicate slightly in different styles as well. In the ultimate state, there is no person there. There's no person there, but you know, words can be spoken, words can be spoken, but it's not a person that's speaking them. It's not a body that's speaking them. They're just coming out of the infinite. You see, so
out of the infinite.
Well, you see, like if you identify with your thoughts, it's like the experiencing is that you are your thoughts. If you identify with the body, then it seems that your location is fixed to the identification with the body. So then you become like an experiencing of, if someone was to ask you, who are you? You say, oh, I'm this body. I experience this body, and experiencing my thoughts, that's what I am. You see? So that's the experience for the individual who's almost having this experience of contraction. You see? So as you let go, as you let go of identifying with the body, you get to places when you're no longer identified with the body. It's like there's a limitless experiencing, which is not limited just to the location of the body in the now. And as you let go of the identification with thoughts, it's not that, just like a chair is in the room, one isn't the chair, you see. And even if thoughts are going along, one isn't the thoughts. So this is the metaphor, the famous metaphor of the clouds. You see, when one is identified as a cloud, it's like, well, who are you? I'm the cloud. As you disidentify from the cloud, your experiencing becomes, if you could speak it, who are you? Well, I'm the limitless sky. You see, that contraction to being a cloud or to being the thoughts is gone. So there's a limit. But it doesn't mean that there's no clouds. I mean, the body can walk around, speaking can happen. But it's not from a place of limits, you see. So as you dissolve identification with the egos, that for me is my take. I'm not an expert on Christianity myself, so I think you're more of an expert. But, but with enlightenment or non-duality or Advaita, that's the death. The death of, you could say, the death of identification with limits. The limited body, the limited thoughts as being self. Then this limitless experiencing in the present moment. Even though thoughts may happen, one is not the thoughts. Even though there may be a body in the room, one is not the body. So things seem to be happening, but there's not a individuality or a person located or contracted that's saying or saying that, and it's not coming from a limited location, you see. So that's then one is now the limitless, the eternal. The eternal is not contracted into a little space here. The eternal is not a thought that just floats by. So that becomes an experience. Mm-hmm. And then others look at someone who's in the eternal state and think they are the body and they're thinking as a kind of a contracted thing that they're interacting with. But you could almost say it's almost like you're talking to God, you see, because there isn't that contraction there. So whatever words come out is whatever words come out, whatever movements, whatever. And then other people at different levels of consciousness will make up their own story about whether it's personal or coming from a limited place or not, depending on their own, usually on their own level of body and thought identification. And I think there is a level of different teachers who get to high levels, also slightly having an influence and a different flavour in the way they communicate and their style of talking. It's not that there's a person talking, but it seems like the vocabulary and the things that they do seem to be influenced, have an influence. Yeah, that's my understanding. In that way, like you've been in you are when you're in the observer of your thoughts and your body. Are you the thoughts of the body?
No, I'm the observer.
Yes.
Okay.
Is the observer limited in any way? Like stuck in a little place or something?
No, it's not limited. It's kind of located.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, if it's located, there is some. Eventually, as you do work, something is observing the location. Yeah. Something is observing location which is not in location, which is locationless.
Well, when I mean located, I feel it like in my head actually.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, your head is a location. So if I had, like, let's say, for example, this is a cup. This is located here. But then something must be observing this location, which is not this location. Yes? So just to experience this, let's say the location is an object. Yeah? If the location is an object, well, if something is aware or observing an object, that must be prior to the object and not the object. Yeah? So if it's in there, if it's like located around the head, that's an object, that's a location. So to know that, then there must be an observer of that, which is not the limited space that is bigger than the limited space which is observing it. Are you aware of this?
The observer.
Observer of the head space.
No, it's not observing the head, but it's kind of. I feel it in this area.
Okay. Well, this area is being observed.
No, everything is being observed.
Okay. So where are you? Are you the everything that is being observed, or are you this little thing here? Which of the two are you? An experience.
I don't think I understand the question, but what is the question?
You know, I mean, it's okay. Whatever's in the room is in the room.
Mm.
But if you said that you are located in this mug here, then
Well, the observer, there must be some kind of link with either the body or the mind or both at the same time. You know, this, because the observer goes with me wherever I go.
who are you now that's going everywhere? What are you that's going everywhere? What are you identifying as being limited as you now?
But I am. The body is part of me.
Okay.
Yeah. The thought processes that I have are part of me. Any feelings that I might have, they are part of me.
Okay.
And well, yes, there is an awareness of these things going on. That is also part of me.
Oh, I see what you're doing. Okay. Well, you know, so it's like, so you're identifying with this stuff as you. Yes?
They are part of me.
Well, is this mug a part of you?
No.
Why not? Are you observing this mug?
Let's say when I leave the room, the mug is left behind.
Okay. All right. So you're saying the body is part of you. Is it like all the
He goes with me wherever I go.
Okay. So if you if the body goes with you wherever you go,
It is not the same as saying that I am the body. I'm saying that it's part of me.
well, the difference being is that you identify with it as you. When you
I
identify,
would identify if I said that I am the body, then I would identify. But I'm not saying I am the body, I'm saying it is part of me.
well, that's an intellectual construct. You see, I'm saying, what's your experience? I'm not asking you to make a logical
My
conclusion.
experience of what? What was my experience of?
When you're in the observer of the body and the thoughts, is the experience that you are located in this body and the thoughts. So when you're observing it, is it like, because I'm observing the mug. Yes, on a certain level you could say I'm the mug. But the mug is something that's
Well,
here.
I could say the mug is part of my experience. In as much as I'm seeing it.
So there are things which pass, and there is like something which is eternally here. Yes? So the thoughts are observed to pass. Yes?
The thoughts observe the past
No, the thoughts are being observed as passing.
as passing.
Yeah. Because we're trying to
The thoughts might be passing, but the thinking is not.
well, thinking is thoughts.
Thoughts is the content of the thinking. Isn't it?
Yeah, but if there was no
Thinking is the process of.
so which is bigger?
The thinking is bigger.
Oh, so you're saying if thinking is bigger, then there could never be stillness and experiencing.
Well, you know, I had an experience when I was a child.
Yeah.
It lasted. I remember the experience. It lasted. It was a panic experience actually.
Mhm.
The experience of realizing that I could not stop thinking.
Oh,
I wasn't free to stop thinking.
well, that's when you were having. Well, when you're having a panic attack, that would be the case. Yes. Have you had an experience?
It's not that it gave me a panic attack, but it wasn't a pleasurable experience.
No. I'm sure it wasn't a pleasurable experience. You've never had an experience.
It's as if I was sentenced to thinking for as long as I lived.
Oh, so have you ever experienced like a moment of stillness or pure presence? This has never ever happened for you.
You mean a moment of no thinking?
Yes.
No, I don't think I have.
I see where you're coming from now. I see where you're coming from. Because there can be existence without a thought passing by. So that can happen. But unless you've experienced it, I can understand the belief that you are the thinking.
Yes, I'm sure it can happen.
Because,
I don't think I have experience.
Okay.
Of,
well, it becomes very... this is becoming intellectual rather than experiential. You see, as you do spiritual work...
have you had experience of?
Yes.
Experience of exactly what is it like? Not thinking?
Yeah. A lot of people, I think, get that during meditation when they recognize a split second where there was no thought, but they're still there. They don't disappear when there was not a thought. So it's like the thoughts are passing.
I had experience of stillness.
Yes.
But stillness is not the same as not thinking.
Well, okay.
Because in the process of even appreciating the stillness,
Yes.
appreciating the stillness as a stillness,
Yes.
there is a thinking involved. There is a recognition involved, and this recognition is thinking.
No, I would say the recognition is non-verbal. Then the thinking comes in and tries to take credit for understanding.
I mean that thinking is like verbalizing things.
Yes. The stillness is non-verbal, and it's a recognition. It's not an intellectualization, understanding, or a recognition of it. You see, that's your ego just hijacking a moment of stillness and making a story about it. You know what it meant. You know, it's like there's stillness and there's a recognition of the pure limitless stillness. And then your ego goes, yeah, I realized that, and I'm making a story about this, and it's thanks to me that you got that. You know. So you see, your ego's making up stories just to deny that your stillness, your limitless, your eternal presence is more the true aspect of yourself than anything that passes before it. You know, like the passing can pass. There's something that can never pass. That's the eternal, that's the timeless, that's the limitless. Everything that passes before it will be observed, will be witnessed to be coming and going. And when you identify strongly with something that can come and go or change, you haven't yet had the experience that the changing is not you. And we're talking with words, you know.
Yeah.
But yes.
Yeah, I used to make the difference between
Yes.
the thoughts and the thinking. Yes, the thoughts are those who pass. The thinking is the framework in which the thoughts happen. It's like a framework.
Okay, is the framework limited?
Limited.
Is it like a box and thoughts have to flip through this little box and that's what you are? I think what you're trying to say is that thinking is the mind in which the thoughts happen.
Thinking is the mind, yeah, probably, yes.
Okay, I got you. So, okay,
It's like an area, it's an awareness.
it's an area,
In
yeah.
which the thoughts spring up.
You know, if there's limited mind, then there's limitless
Well,
mind.
personally, I've never experienced it as unlimited.
Okay, so we can work on that.
You got it, yeah.
He definitely got you there.
How you experience it as unlimited?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I think lots of people have
Yes,
experienced it as being limitless and not contracted or limited to anything.
Yeah.
I think many have.
What kind of experience is it? How does it come across? It's like a sensation, or
Well, I think you're trying to mentalize.
it's an insight, but
It's a recognition. It's a non-verbal recognition, would probably be a better way, rather than trying to make a story or a label, or the ego, let the ego take ownership, or trying to get a concept of it or a picture of it. You know, which is, I think, can be helpful.
but once you have this recognition,
Yes,
how does that change you?
changes you.
I mean, how does that change your heart?
It's life-changing. To have the recognition that you are the eternal and not the limited, it is a life-changing. And those, I think, who do meditation or stuff tend to less and less buy into that their essence is the limited, and they have a stronger and stronger recognition that they are not the limited, and they can connect to and be that limitless experiencing free of all limits. Even though the limited may happen in the limitless, they are not that.
Is this limitless?
Well, it's a word.
Experience, or yes, is it? We can also call it God or the divinity.
Yeah, there's levels of God. I think in the Course in Miracles, one level is calling it oneness, where there's no separation, and one is not contracted. You know, using Course language, you see, all my thoughts are meaningless. I'm not a body, I'm free, for I am as God created me. So what we're doing is we're letting go of the habitual identification with body and thoughts, that limited contraction, so that one can experience something eternal or limitless or all-encompassing. It's like if people come into the room and they say, I'm a cloud in the beginning on day one, then that feeling of being a cloud in that location starts to disappear as you do the spiritual work. And then actually there is this feeling of oneness or limitlessness. One is not located or limited, and there is no sense of separation. You know, like things, there may be clouds in the room, but one is not the cloud, even though clouds may be there. So these come up, the more one lets go of these heavy identifications. Yes, I mean, that makes sense, you know, when one is, but as you do self-inquiry, you let go of what's limited. Like, generally most people will have like a location for their, what I call the limited mind, and thoughts tend to happen in that location and the identification with the body. But then something is observing that, which is not contracted to that location or those thoughts, you see. So you're unhooking, you're disidentifying from being in this contracted place. So then you get the, then you eventually start to get these non-verbal, expansive. Yes, you have something to say.
To feel it as an experience.
Yes.
Yes. Because these are words and everything can be in the head.
Yes.
Yes. But to feel it as an experience, you take, as you say, you take the route of, say, meditation, for instance.
Yes, that's one route. Yes.
It's one route. It's not the only one. Yes. By meditation, what do you exactly mean? Yeah, like Because with meditation there are also different...
Yes, there's many different styles.
Many different styles, yeah. So
Yeah, no.
the one, for instance, that I'm more familiar with is the so-called Zen meditation that you sit there facing a wall. But what is happening? Well, maybe it's not that the type of meditation.
Well, I'm not an expert on Zen, but I think they are hoping you get to the non-dual place, or the limitless place, you know. But I'm not an expert. Yeah, I'm sure they do. You know, it's,
in your case, what form does the meditation take?
Well,
do you do the self-inquiry while you're meditating?
well, the self-inquiry is the meditation, you see.
The self-inquiry is the meditation.
You see, self-inquiry for me is is one of my favourite tools. It's not the only tool I use, but see.
But self-inquiry involves thinking, doesn't it?
No.
It doesn't.
No, you misunderstand the deeper meaning of self-inquiry. In the early days, the ego interprets it as a thinking modality and uses it in that way, and that's good. What's observing this? Almost like the ego is like is the reality, saying that the observer is something that the ego has a capacity to get to. Yes? So it seems like the ego is real and the observer is like a temporary thing. But as you keep inquiring, you realize that if you repeatedly go to the observer of a heavy identification, then it eventually dissolves and disappears. You see? So then it's recognized that anything that is identified now is something that still has identification. That's why it's creating that sense of limitation, whether it be a thought or the body or a location or even tracking time. So all of these things. So then one then just intuitively knows, well, you know, something witnesses or observes time passing which is not time. What is that? That is timeless, which observes time and it has no hook, no identification with the passing of time. What is here as an experience, and then that's recognized, you know, as you go into the timeless. You know, even though thoughts may be passing, something has no identification with thoughts. And then when there's this no identification with thoughts, often there's stillness, or often even if thoughts are there, they are not what one is. It's very, very clear. So that tends to happen. Also, as one disidentifies with the location or the feelings or sensations in the body, then actually this sense of constriction, one isn't the body as an experience, you see, because that which is observing the sensations in the body or location of body is beyond sensations and beyond any limit. So as you keep dissolving these habitual identifications, then even the experiencing is that one isn't the body. You know, one has more of a limitless, eternal experiencing. It's a non-verbal experiencing. It's got nothing to do, because that energy which goes to the thinking and seems to give a reality to the thinking being the real you is dissipated. So it's like in the present moment things are arising and happening, but it's all being observed. It's not any particular thing is what you are as a constriction or as a limit or as a sense of separation that has dissolved.
It sounds very intellectual, doesn't it?
Okay, so
the self-inquiry stuff sounds very intellectual.
Well, let's try and make it non-intellectual. Oh yes, yeah. That's a good time to go to the loo. It's usually the time about now.